Welcome to Develop Your A-Level Teaching. This is the second session on how we can push students from A to A star. I'm Audrey Douglas, and today we're going to start off by reflecting on the teaching strategies from last session. Before the practical activity, we will analyse the fluent aspects of A star work and create scaffolds to guide students in developing rigour and the resilience required to reach A star. Let's begin by reflecting on the learning theories from last session and how you may be implementing these in your teaching. So we'll start off by reflecting on the effortful thinking teaching strategies. That was the main focus of last session, and how these worked in your lessons and may be leading to more fluent A-star style outcomes. So we understand Dan Willingham's learning theory that students learn new ideas by connecting these to what they already know in their schema, their web of knowledge. And our aim is to build and extend this foundational web of knowledge so students can apply the rigour and challenge of A-star. In Barrett Rosenshine's theory, in lessons, how effectively did you use the instructional time, the thinking aloud, the scaffolding and the modelling? And those are all from Rosenshine's principles. And in sharing these worked examples to extend effortful thinking and prompt students to make connection. So reflect now for a minute, thinking about how you may have used those principles from Rosenshine on instructional time, thinking aloud, scaffolding, modelling. Well done. In between each of the slides that I'm going to show today, there will be moments where we're going to reflect. If you're with a group, you can obviously discuss. And if you're online, you can reflect independently. You might want to take some notes just to collect your thoughts together. So we'll move on to the next slide. Reflect on the success of planning for effortful thinking. So you're reflecting on your teaching and you're planning this time for effortful thinking in lessons, and which activities that you planned led to more A-style outcomes. In Graham Nuttall's theory, we learnt that learning happens over time, and to integrate it into long-term memory has to be encountered at least 3 times in a variety of forms. This really helps students secure the concepts in their long-term knowledge and in their schema. So in students applying this knowledge in a variety of ways, they may have used effortful thinking, problem solving, and reasoning. So did your activities enable students to encounter these and revisit concepts in a variety of ways that challenge them to think more deeply and remember more? Take a moment to pause and reflect on the variety of activities that you created and used in the classroom. Thank you. Now we'll look at, in creating those tasks, how did you incorporate that deeper two system thinking to make learning more effortful and rigorous, that really uses applying logic, calculation. It demands the cognitive resources, and that's what helps elevate to A-star. So now really focus on your reflection. You incorporated that really more effortful a deeper system to thinking. Well done. So in the first slide, we looked at effortful thinking teaching strategies. And in the next one, we looked at planning. So this went for more effortful thinking. In this next slide, we're going to look at the impact of effortful thinking on students' cognitive load and how you supported them with this to reach A star. So intrinsic cognitive load refers to the innate difficulty of the task. Some concepts are more complex, requiring more cognitive load, and that demands on the working memory to understand. So how effective were you in guiding effortful thinking moments by supporting students to ask those how, why, those hinged questions to get that deeper thinking at A star level? Perhaps this one will make it easier. So the more prior knowledge, the more effective the good germane cognitive load is to integrate that new knowledge with the schema. We know that if they have that good foundation, it's going to be easier for them to apply and integrate that new knowledge. So perhaps this question will help. Did you plan pause moments to think deeply about the learning as students were learning, so students could apply that recall? Did you give them time to do that? Did you give them those prompt questions to help them do that? And quite often, tasks that drive students to think deeply about self-explaining helps them to remember and apply that more. So did you incorporate those tasks that help students to self-explain or summarise how they applied retrieval? That will help them to remember it as well. Take a moment to reflect or discuss on that. So if you've really been driving students forward to think more deeply about their learning and making it much more challenging, although you've been using scaffolds to support and using those questions, what do you think the impact of that is on the students, that their efforts through that thinking? So, did those activities motivate or demotivate your students? So when effortful thinking is just too challenging and it demotivates students because that germane load is too great, so the cognitive overload, that's the mental capacity to integrate new knowledge with existing schema. This is where sometimes metacognitive strategies come into play, and it will really help with that. So that's when students are aware of all the thinking processes and they're able to adapt new information. And so you might really be going through step by step, explaining what students have to do in the tasks. And that's really good metacognitive strategy. So let's consider now, so this is the sort of like, we're nearly at the end here. Consider the metacognitive approaches and decisions that you guided students to use, such as a framework to develop effortful thinking? And did they support or motivate students? Did you notice a difference in them now tackling that higher level of demand and challenge more? I'm going to finalise my section by really looking at the intrinsic motivation and that effortful thinking, and whether the students have been able to respond to that. We know it can be very fragile, so let's have a look at this, the motivation, and the levels of resilience that students have. Students who experience high levels of success, they tend to tackle more challenging problems. But what about the ones who don't? What about the ones who are struggling more, just on that cusp of A-star and they just can't quite get there? Those really top students seem to be able to organise their ideas better, they're more confident, they see things from a wider perspective. But we know for some that's more fragile. So I had a quick look at what Pips McCrea and Inner Drive to see what they both recommended. And they both said, well, keep your expectations really high for the students, and think about that Pygmalion effect, and it's got to be high, but also you have to support them with that. And it's about creating that classroom culture at A level. They're really that inclusive classroom, and that breeding belonging. It increases that sense of like, we are together in this and shared values, and think about how you can get that A-star students to work together to help them to reach that level. And always in our classrooms, consistent routines and applying effective instruction methods. And obviously, we always want to build that buy-in, share why the decisions are made. I mentioned before about when you're developing those metacognitive strategies, tell them explicitly what you're doing and why for each section of the lesson, because that can be a little bit like that blind knowledge. You have it, but they don't. And you think because you know it, they'll also assume it, but they can't make those assumptions. They don't have that background that you do as experts. And also, I think really lots of that live feedback, boosting their confidence and resilience as they're going through the task, lots of positivity, and harnessing your students' energy, planning for the obstacles they will face. So think ahead, what am I going to need to create with these frameworks and scaffolds to elevate to A-star? And that's what we're going to be looking at today, more of that.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for listening so far. I hope you feel ready and inspired for the upcoming meetings. This final part of the keynote, I'll talk you through what you can expect from these and how you can prepare for them. So let's quickly go over the logistics for our up and coming meeting. English and maths are in person from 4:30 to 6, while other subjects are online from 4 till 5:30. We've designed this structure to maximise convenience and interaction, so please make sure to add to your calendars and prepare accordingly, as we've got some exciting tasks lined up. The meetings will be divided into 3 sections. The first section will be a chance to reflect. The second section will be a chance to share ideas and collaborate. And finally, we look at actions going forwards. So in our subject meetings, we'll focus on 3 core activities: reflections, collaborative analysis of A-star student answers, and answering questions as if we were A-star students ourselves. The aim is to unlock strategies that bring effortful thinking and fluency into our students' work. Preparation is key to making these meetings truly productive. So please bring or email an A-star student's answer and some blank questions. We'll use these as the foundation for meaningful analysis and discussion. And this means we can break down excellence to build frameworks that we can share with our students. So, part 1. This is where we put on our detective hats as we analyse A-star students' work. Let's look for those golden threads. What makes these answers stand out? How do students demonstrate intent, resilience, and rigour? By pinpointing these elements, we can start weaving similar success stories for all our learners. The next part, we'll shift gears to answer blank questions collectively. This exercise isn't just about finding the right answer, but understanding the framework and prompts that lead to excellence. What we create here can be a toolkit for guiding students in future lessons. And finally, looking ahead to our final meeting in July. There's so much potential to shape the agenda based on our group's needs. We've got connections with major exam boards, and this will enrich the discussion. So let us know what you would find most helpful, and we can make it a powerhouse of a session. Finally, action going forwards. Resource sharing came through as a strong suggestion in the feedback forms. Let's lean into that. Whether it's podcasts, competitions, or study tools, these resources can stretch our students beyond the specification. Let's keep those conversations going, even outside of our meetings. So, as we wrap up, let's focus on what really matters. How we can drive effortful thinking in our students while building resilience and independence. Keep these questions in mind as you plan your revision sessions. And when we regroup in July, it'll be exciting to hear all the amazing ideas and insights you bring to the table.